Facebook, almost on YouTube, just not quite yet. All right, it looks like we're live on YouTube now as well. And I know many of you will not be tuning into this live. You will probably be watching it via a link that I send out a little bit later on. But I felt compelled to just share a few thoughts with you. And actually, I have some notes here. So if I look down, it's because I'm reading some of those notes, and I want what I'm saying to be clear because I think it's important. And so that's why I would look down. If you see me look down, I wanted to share some thoughts with you about Pioneer the last couple of weeks, which has been great to be able to meet in person, out in the field and or under the tent. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about Pioneer going forward, and even the latest mandate that many of us have heard today from Governor Kate Brown. I believe that churches are in a very interesting situation, one in which it rarely finds itself, one where few, if any, pastors alive today have had to navigate. And I have come to the realization that some people won't like anything that I decide, and that some people will like some things that I decide for Pioneer, and others won't be happy with anything, and nobody will be happy with everything. But I've also come to the point where I'm fine with that. The reality is, God has called me to be the under shepherd for Pioneer under his leadership. And so my responsibility is to follow the Lord's lead, not whether this person thinks that the coronavirus is a total political ploy, or whether this person over here thinks that it's the next Black Plague. My responsibility as the pastor is to follow the Lord and to try to care for and lead people the best way that I can, led by the Spirit of God. And I admit here, right here, I'll tell you this: I am not perfect, but I hope you know me well enough to know that I love you and that I'm trying to do the best that I can. And so, as I have kind of processed this information and thought over the current situation that we're in, especially after today's news conference with Governor Brown, I want to share just a few things. I genuinely believe, and I know there are some people that don't, I genuinely believe that COVID-19 is an issue, and one that needs to be handled carefully. People are genuinely getting sick, and people are seriously dying. It does appear to be a contagious sickness, even for people that are asymptomatic. Now, even with cases rising, I'm glad to see that it appears that death rates are lowering, despite what people say about that. That appears to be the case. I will also say, though, we don't know the long-term effects of this sickness. And so, for some of those reasons, I believe it's important for Christians not to just look at this situation as strictly from a political standpoint, or even from just strictly a medical standpoint. It's imperative that we look at it from a Christian standpoint, one that follows Christ's headship, and one that cares deeply about our brothers and sisters. So, to that end, let me just share with you some thoughts that I've had. First of all, I will say this, I do believe that Governor Brown's decision today was overreach and a double standard. For her to say that some people can meet inside with 10 or fewer, but others can't, seems absolutely silly. They're basically at this point picking and choosing who can and who can't. As I've said before, I was willing to follow, what the leadership said, following Romans 13 for the betterment for the betterment and health of the vulnerable, and to follow the lead of the people the Lord has placed before us, as long as places of worship, churches, were not held to a different standard than other people. However, I think over the past month or so, we've all seen that that time has passed, and today was, I think, another showing of that. That they just pick and choose. Now, I will say I'm glad. I'm glad that she has um, allowed churches to be in that group of people that can meet with 10 or more indoors. I'm thankful that this time they're included in that. But I do believe the church has to play a vital role in standing up for biblical God given rights in this moment. I have used and have desired for my ministry to be uh, if somebody were to define it, that I would hope that one of the words that they would use would be the word balance. And I believe that balance is needed here. The church is an assembly. It's meant to fellowship together, to sing together, to feast on the word of God together, and so on. And the danger of our current situation and the number of people being able to meet together shrinking and being squished and told you can or can't do this, and like in California, you can or can't sing, and all of those different kinds of things. The danger is that people can become so comfortable with church online that they'll begin to believe that spiritual growth is an individual pursuit, and that the togetherness, what the Bible refers to as koinonia, the coming together fellowship, will be lost. And that is not good, nor is it biblical. Um, it's important for us to understand that church is not watching online or listening to a podcast or jumping from virtual pastor to virtual pastor or having a devotional with some friends or family devotions. We need to make sure and guard carefully that we are continuing to serve and to invite and to give and to be the community, the church that God wants us to be. This past week in church, in my prayer, I asked that God would make Pioneer truly a sanctuary. I believe our time of worshiping together should be a sacred space where the worries of the world and the demons of the world and even the governments of the world cannot touch us. We are an embassy of another kingdom. However, as such, it is imperative to understand and to realize that our main goal isn't to show anybody up or to prove a political point or to show that my view on the situation is better than yours. And by the way, I'm amazed by how many people have all of a sudden become medical experts. Um, our main objective isn't any of those things. Our main objective is the gospel. And we need to remember that. And I don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. I believe that we should preach a message of hope and peace that will free people from the fear that the world has a stranglehold on many people right now. And I think we should be very mindful of the stewardship of the gospel that God has given us in this time and in this moment. Unfortunately, many people have allowed everything from numbers to death rates to masks to become a divisive political symbol. And depending on what side we are on, sometimes we can think the worst of other people. We can either think, well, those people are just living in fear, or sometimes other people look at them and say, well, those people are just science deniers. And with so much information available and conflicting reports as to what is right or what is best, it becomes really easy for us to just not waste the mental energy and the emotional energy that it does to wade through all of that. And a lot of times we'll just line up or agree with whoever we're just comfortable with. But it's important. It's more important that we think about what our faith compels us to do. And we have been called to love our neighbors, to honor the weak, to use our freedoms for the gospel's sake. And so, for those two reasons, I have two, I believe, very simple and reasonable requests. I believe that each one of us should act as responsible people, right? We all want to be treated as adults, and I'll treat you as an adult. My request, though, is as I treat you as an adult, that you act like an adult. Um, that's all that I ask. But we should be responsible people who love God supremely and show it by our love one for another. As a matter of fact, the Bible tells us very clearly that by this shall all men know that you're my disciples if you have love one for another. Basically, I'm willing to put myself aside for the betterment of my brother and sister. So here they are. Here are the two requests that are coming from a pastor's heart, and all of the things I just said just a little while ago. Here that very simply. Number one, when we meet in person, I know that we're excited to see one another. But I'm asking you, even there on the farm and in the tent, I'm asking you to work diligently to try to maintain some social distancing, not just maintain social distancing in those situations. Try your best to avoid touching other people. Be cognizant of touching your face and use good hygiene. Wash and sanitize your hands. All of those things that we had a great fervor for in the beginning of this thing. Don't lose your fervor for those things, even though we're now meeting together. Be cognizant of those things. Care enough about other people who may have a differing opinion about this thing than you do to say, you know what, I'm going to recognize this and try to maintain some of this. Secondly, and this is probably a bigger one. Secondly, while I know today that the governor of Oregon mandated wearing masks in outdoor groups who are not able to maintain social distancing, I first of all, I don't believe we need to do that because I believe that we can, and that's what I just asked you to do. I believe we can maintain proper social distancing, so there's no need for us to follow that mandate anyway. I'll say this right now: I will not ask you to wear a mask, as especially as we're meeting in outdoor spaces. However, I do have a something for you to consider. I would like for you to prayerfully consider wearing a mask while we sing. That's it. Just during that one aspect of our service. It has been proven that singing in close proximity, especially in churches where that is the place where this thing can spread far and wide. And I know we're outside, and I know that that can be taken anywhere and everywhere, but we're still somewhat in a tight space, and we're all singing in that way. And again, I will say this is not a requirement. I am not requiring I am not requiring you to do it. But I will say this: I want you to consider it, and I want you to understand that if you're comfortable doing so, I encourage you to do so. If you have no genuine issue, I just ask you to prayerfully consider it. If you choose not to, I will allow that to be your decision. But if you're not wearing a mask while we sing, just because you look around and see that other people aren't, I don't want that to be your motivation. If you're comfortable doing that and you're fine with doing that, I'm asking you to consider doing that. I'll encourage you and welcome you to do that during just that part of the service. That's it. And it's usually right towards the beginning. We see three songs, and that is it. Listen, is it my favorite thing to do? Absolutely not. No. Um, I'm not a big fan of, the thoughts like people talk about, breathing in your own carbon dioxide. I will say this much. It has given me a greater respect for doctors and nurses that have to wear those things for, 12-hour shifts. Man, that's all. I have a great amount of respect for them for having to do that. I realize, and so is it my favorite thing? No, it's not. I don't like it really at all. However, I realize that this COVID-19 is real, and we have I want you to understand, we have vulnerable people in our midst that have been coming to our services. And so why not try to do a little bit more for a few moments to potentially help them? If you choose not to, like I said, I'll not judge you. I won't think any differently. Past 3-4 weeks, whatever it's been, we've met outside. Very few, if any of us, have worn masks, myself included. I understand. I completely get it. I just want to strongly suggest considering some of these thoughts that I've shared with you today. And I believe that the best days of Pioneer are ahead, even in the near future. And I want each and every single one of you to be around for it. And so may God bless you, and I hope you have a great night.